Good morning. This is Father David, here with chapter 19, the Lenten spring, the Wiles of the Devil. And this is we've just gone through the prayer of St. Ephrem, the Lord's Prayer, various different, sort of central prayers to us during the Christian life in general, and then also within the Great Fast. But Father Tom starts off this chapter, the Wiles of the Devil, talking about the last line of the Our Father. But deliver us from, some translations say, evil. Our diocese, our founding Archbishop, was pretty insistent in translating that the evil one. Not to say that it couldn't be evil in general, but the evil one is to remind us that there is an evil one who goes around, as it says, St. Peter says in one of his epistles, like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And I'm not going to go terribly much into, because the majority of this chapter is actually a letter from our parish's heavenly patron, St. Anthony the Great. And I'm going to read that excerpt from one of his letters, writing to, some of his disciples. And, it's, just before I read this, there's something that anybody who's ever heard a confession, any priest who's ever heard a confession, anybody who's ever gone through a great Lent and suffered unusually severe temptations, oftentimes people will say, in any season of the year, I'm trying to, increase my attention to God, my prayer, my fasting, my reading of the scriptures, my reading of the fathers, and I feel like I'm getting worse and not better. I feel like I'm failing more. I'm getting more discouraged. My feelings are more out of control. And I have to tell them, and I have to remind myself, that's a feature, not a bug. Because, if you're doing what the demons want, they'll leave you alone. Primarily, they'll leave you to your own sick heart. But if you try to fight against where they want to keep you, they will go on the attack. Anyway, this is St. Anthony's letter. The excerpt in this chapter says, quote, I want you to know, my children, that I cease not to pray to God for you night and day, that he may open for you the eyes of your hearts to see the many hidden malignities which the evil spirits pour on us daily. I want God to give you a heart of knowledge and a spirit of discernment, that you may be able to offer your hearts as a pure sacrifice before the Father, in great holiness, without blemish. Truly, my children, they envy us at all times, with their evil counsel and hidden persecution, and subtle malice, and spirit of seduction, and their blasphemous thoughts, and their hardening of heart, and their many griefs which they bring upon us at every hour, and the faintings which they make to our heart to faint daily, and all the anger and mutual slander which they teach us, and the self-justification in what we do, and the judgments which they set in our hearts, causing us to judge our fellows, and the contempt which they set in our hearts by pride, when we are hard-hearted and despise each other. So, again, I'm pausing here. It ain't always just the demons. Like, we cooperate with this, but they stoke the fire. They make it harder to resist. But we are the main players in this. Anyway, grieving at every hour, accusing each other and not ourselves, thinking that our toil is from our fellows, not ourselves, sating in judgment on what appears outwardly, while the robber is all within our house, i.e. the devil is in us, attacking us, and the disputes and divisions wherein we dispute each other until we establish our own way to appear justified in the face of each other. The evil spirits make us jealous for works in which we are not able to accomplish. and cause us to faint in tasks in which we are engaged and which are profitable for us. They make us laugh when it is time for weeping, and weep when it is time for laughter, and simply turn us aside at every time from the right way. But when they fill our hearts with these deceits, and we feed on them, and they become our food, then God is patient with us, and he comes to us to bring us back again. Therefore, weary not of praying the goodness of the Father, if perchance his help may come upon you, that you may teach yourselves to know what is right. In truth, my children, I tell you that every person who delights in his own will, and is subdued to his own thoughts, and takes up the things sown in his heart, and rejoices in them, and supposes in his heart that these are some great chosen mystery, and justifies himself in what he does, the soul of a man is a lair of evil spirits, counseling him to evil, and his body a store of evil mysteries, which it hides in itself. And over such a one the demons have great power, because he has not dishonored them before all men. For they know that our perdition is from our neighbor, and our life also is from our neighbor. For this cause, therefore, he who sins against his neighbor sins against himself, and he who does evil to his neighbor does evil to himself. And he who does good to his neighbor does good to himself. Therefore, let us rouse up God in ourselves by support of one another, and deliver ourselves to death for our souls and for each other. And if we do this, we shall be manifesting the very substance of God's compassion for us. Let us not be lovers of ourselves, so as not to become subject to the power of evil spirits. Saint Anthony, the great heavenly patron of our church and our parish community here in San Antonio, pray to God for us. So we're right now, of course, playing catch up with the videos. We're here in the 5th week of Lent. This is a particularly heavy week liturgically. And there's even, I don't know if you might want to call it a folk tradition. I wouldn't be surprised if there had been within their lived experience, mainly with, I believe, the Greeks, that it's this week that's called when the purple demons, because everything in Lent, it's all purple. The churches are purple. And they call it the purple demons get released, And all of a sudden, you have people losing their temper. All of a sudden, you have problems in churches. The choir is, fighting within each other. The priest has a problem with the deacon, or, some, marriage blows up, there's some scandal within a parish. I mean, it's, something, all of this on top of the increased liturgical activity that's going on. It is a very intense spiritually week. I'm actually very glad that, God willing, may God continue to grant, this week none of the overt scandals have been going on. But really, the spiritual struggle often can tend to get much more intense during this week and throughout all of Great Lent as well. But again, this is, our participation day by day, week by week, temptation by temptation, in what St. Anthony experienced far more greatly and far more intensely. His temptation in his autobiography by St. Athanasius went on all night. There was no relief. He cried out to Christ all night, and there was nothing. The demons were howling like wild beasts. They even came and beat on him physically, to where great bruises and whelps appeared on his body. And then finally, the light broke through just before dawn, and God said, when St. Anthony asked, "Where were you?" He said, "I was always with you. But you needed for your faith to endure. I wanted to see that your faith would endure." God, of course, knowing that it would. But, this is our fight. This is our fight, that we should be encouraged by the fight of many of the other saints. And we ought to be aware also of their wiles, that their primary, his phrase, diabolos, his name in Greek, diabolos, the devil, is both the accuser and also, he is the one that divides us. He is the one that splits us from one another through scandal or impatience or frustration or disappointment, But the best way, two of the best ways really that we can fight him is to adhere to the two greatest commandments of Christ. Number one, to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength. How is it that we love God directly? Well, the main thing that God wants us to do is to be people of prayer, to be constant in prayer. And again, I know no better way to remain constantly in the presence of God than the meditation on the Jesus prayer. To keep that as your constant companion, to bat away the wiles of the devil, the temptations. Of course, our daily prayers. Here during the 5th week of Lent, we have all of these services. To make the time to attend some of them, what you are able. We are all, of course, very busy and our schedules are what they are. But, we make time for what we make time for. And it is time to love God, to come and express our love and devotion to God. And then, of course, inseparably, you cannot truly love God if you do not love your neighbor as yourself. Likewise, you cannot truly love your neighbor as yourself unless you are actively loving God. That is, it will be incomplete. It will be just, charitable works, do-goodism, and it will not reach the mark. But we love our neighbor by giving them the benefit of the doubt, by forgiving and being forgiven. By extending the olive branch, burying the hatchet, making peace, St. Paul says, as far as it depends on you. They might not accept it, but you're called to, and when you have participated in it, to ask humbly for forgiveness and to seek restoration with your brother, so as to go in peace to your prayer. And just one final thing with reconciliation to God. We've talked about confession. I've had my Lenten confession late last week. I went and, it's when we combat the wiles of the devil through confession. Confession is essential, but it isn't meant to take away all of the temptation, take away all of the trial, the problems, make everything okay. The devil quit bothering me. No, he isn't. But following your confession, what it does is it puts you not in a place of moral perfection, not in a place of spiritual invincibility, but in a place where you can more easily fight. It's like when you're bound up with particular sinful habits, it's like trying to fight with one hand tied behind your back. Awkwardly, right? With confession, your hands are freed and you're put back in a position where you are more readily able to fight, to mount a defense and an offense. And I can just simply, within my own experience, the Jesus prayer was ringing hollow prior to it during Lent. The spiritual attacks that I tend to experience were far more intense, notably so this Lent. Following my confession, I'm still fighting. But the Jesus prayer, there is more of a peace, there's more of a connection, there's more of a presence of God that I can stay in. And I'm very grateful for that. So I would encourage you, those that have not, so many people at St. Anthony's have, but even those who are watching this from beyond St. Anthony's, go to confession, free up your hands, prepare your hands to war and your fingers to fight, as the psalmist says. And in doing so, we can take up arms against the wiles of the devil, and by God's help, to make progress and to stand victorious over what we were held captive by before. So may God bless you. Lord willing, we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.